Good morning to you, Neama. Appreciate your time on this Monday. So let's talk about this hearing this morning. What is your take on the probability? Because we've all seen video and photos of Robert Durst, and he is obviously declining in physical health. What's your take? Does the defense have a legitimate argument here? Will they be able to indefinitely continue this trial?
Good morning, Ted. Thanks for having me. The defense has a shot, but not a good one here. And the issue is physical incompetence. So we know the standard for mental incompetence. There really is no standard for physical incompetence. And this is really a big hurdle that the defense is going to have to climb. We know the judge in this case wants to move forward. They filed motion after motion for mistrial 3, and they've actually renewed that motion. They filed a writ to the Court of Appeal to impanel a new jury. So to continue a trial indefinitely based on physical incompetence, based on the testimony of one doctor, Dr. Klein, who's pretty well known here at UCLA and Cedars, probably not going to fly with this particular judge.
What's your take about bringing back the jury after 14 months off during the COVID delay? Can they be rehabilitated with some voir dire?
I think so, but this is really unprecedented. We've never seen a trial that's been continued for 14 months. Obviously, everything right now that we're dealing with is new. This is one of the first jury trials that's happening here in LA County after the pandemic. I understand the judge's position that he doesn't want to go through that very long jury selection process that resulted in 12 jurors and 11 alternates and start that over. But this is a potential appellate issue. Even if Durst is convicted, this is something that the prosecution is going to have to deal with on appeal. Hopefully the judge is going to do a good job during that 2-hour voir dire to re-interview the jurors to see if they've heard any information about the case or solidified any biases towards the prosecution. Because let's not forget, the party's open, but the prosecution had 2 days of witnesses before this trial was continued.
Yeah, they've already heard that. The 23 jurors, as you mentioned, 12 and then 11 alternates. They were picked from a panel of 400 plus. It was laborious to get to this point. Durst's attorneys not only want this indefinite continuance, they also want him out on bail during the process. And they say, listen, he's going to pay for everything. We'll have GPS monitoring, a high bail amount. Just put him into a medical facility. He'll pay for the security detail. I already know your answer, Neama. This won't fly, will it?
No, this is the least likely of the defense arguments, Ted. I mean, this would be a home run, Durst being out on bond, but this is not going to happen. Here's someone that, even though he's on trial for 1 murder, the judge knows that really this is about 3 murders, so there's no chance that Bob Durst is going to be out on bail after today.
Yeah, agreed. Robert Durst spent a large portion of his adult life trying to evade law enforcement, but justice caught up with him in 2015. Down in New Orleans, and his investigators questioned him after taking him into custody. They questioned him about the trail of bodies that Robert Durst has allegedly left in his wake. Whatever my lawyers tell me to do. Well, his lawyers would have told him not to have that extended conversation with the lead prosecutor and investigators when he was taken into custody down in New Orleans back in 2015. How much damage does that do to him and his ability to worm himself out of his predicament he's in now?
It is damaging because he's caught in lie after lie. Really sort of fascinating 3-hour interview with John Lewin, the head prosecutor down in New Orleans after Durst is arrested. I can't just help but watch every single minute. But ultimately, he has to pull back that statement because the handwriting does match, and he has to admit to writing the letter. And Lewin did a great job of getting him to say that I did not find the body, because that's a completely inconsistent story with what the defense said during opening. And it just shows the psychology of Bob Durst, thinking he can always talk his way out of everything, whether it's a Morris Black case, whether talking to the prosecutor in this case. That's why we know that he's going to take the stand, even before the defense said it in their opening.
Yeah, he almost has to clear this up, and he has to embrace his eccentricness, and the defense has already intimated that that's what they're going to do, is say, hey, he's a little off, but you're going to get to know him. And the key is to catch one juror at least to try to hang this thing up. What about the fact that the defense now is saying, yes, he did go to Susan Berman's place, and he saw her, and then he just left and wrote the notes. That doesn't make any sense that if you didn't do anything wrong and you go and you find your friend dead, you don't run and write a note. You call 911 and say, oh my gosh, my friend is dead.
Well, Ted, this may be the same Chip Lewis defense that they used in Houston, right? Out there in Galveston. You got to admit something, and there's no question, even to a layperson like myself, Bob Durst wrote that note. So that puts him at least at the scene of the crime. He has to argue that he was afraid, and that's the same argument that he used down in Texas that got him an acquittal. He was afraid even after he allegedly, killed Morris Black in self-defense. He panicked. That's why he cut up the body, mopped up the floor, and didn't tell law enforcement right away. In this case, he's going to say something similar. He did want to, report it to law enforcement, but he knew that he was going to be the prime suspect in the murder, and that's why he just wrote the note and panicked and fled the way he did.
Yeah, and they bought it in Galveston, the fact that he actually dismembered another human being, and jurors were, well, all right, we believe you, okay. And they were okay with it. He was convicted for the dismembering, but not the murder of Morris Black. You're in L.A., Neama. How much play does this case get?
Ted, this gets a lot of play. Let's not forget, Susan and Bob met in college here in Los Angeles. Susan being the daughter of a mob boss who moved here to go to school. And then this case has been pending for so many years. The murder happened just here in Beverly Hills on Benedict Canyon, close to where the Manson murders happened. So this is the trial that everyone in Los Angeles has been waiting for. This interview happened in 2015. The defense tried to suppress this interview in 2015. So we're waiting 6 years for people to finally get justice in a murder that happened almost 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, based on a cover-up of a murder that happened 40 years ago. So everyone's on pins and needles. That's why I don't expect the case to be continued, and I expect it to move forward today.
The time that has passed, usually one would argue, would help the defense. Is that the case here?
That is the case. These cases tend to get worse over time. And John Lewin's a great prosecutor. He specializes in these cold cases. And that's why he's tried to preserve the testimony of some of the witnesses. For instance, Nick Shavins, one of the older witnesses, he's used a rarely cited provision of the California Penal Code that allows prosecutors to lock in that testimony earlier because he is concerned, just like Bob Durst is frail, that some of these witnesses are older. They may pass on either due to natural causes or COVID before this trial is concluded in 4 to 5 months.
John Lewin, you say he's outstanding. You watched him during the openings. He is very invested in this. You could tell it in that 2015 interview. You could tell it how frustrated he was during the openings, going back and forth with Dick DeGuerin, who's another fine attorney who was able to get that not guilty down in Galveston. 2 days of openings, 4 months of trial. He doesn't, Lewin is really addressing every little bit of this very complicated story. Is that too much? Is it simpler than that? Is there a risk in going too long with this narrative and this storytelling?
Yeah, that is a risk. And John Lewin has been living with this case for years. I mean, this is what he's been working on. This is his life project. I mean, it's rare that you see a prosecutor spend 5, 10 years on a case, but this is a very unique case, and this is someone that has evaded justice for decades. But I agree with you, Ted. Calling 100 witnesses or more over a period of 4 to 5 months may be overkill in a case like this.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Top of the hour, Neama, here we go. We're getting close. They want a continuance. What do you think is going to take place? How is this going to take place at the top of the hour here? Do you think the defense brings in a medical expert to say, hey, this guy is in bad shape?
I don't know if Dr. Klein is going to testify, but he is the defense's medical expert. He's going to talk about and he's an expert, he's a nephrologist, he's an expert on the bladder, and he's going to talk about Durst's medical condition. I don't think it's going to be enough to continue the trial, but that's where I expect this to go this morning. They will make their record. It's just going to be another appellate issue. But Bob Durst will probably die in prison before all this is resolved.
Before we'll get a verdict?
I think we'll get a verdict because this judge has been focused on this case, laser focused, and he is intent on moving forward. I think we will get a verdict Bob Durst will survive this trial, and when he's sentenced to California State Prison, that's where he will pass before all his appeals are exhausted.
Yeah. But so you're predicting a guilty verdict, obviously. However, he will take the stand, likely in his own defense. We saw him in that incredible interview. That interview is also going to be obviously played. We've seen snippets in the open. They're going to let him talk, will they not?
Oh, no question. Bob Durst will take the stand in this case, and he's going to try to explain it away. So we talked about this over 100 witnesses that we're going to see, but really the only one that's going to matter is going to be Durst himself. He will take the stand. I expect days of testimony because he likes to talk and ramble on, and Lewin is going to come after him in cross-examination, and the jury is going to have to decide: do I believe this eccentric multimillionaire, or is he a cold-blooded killer?
He does admit to a lot of things. Yes, I stole the water. I've been shoplifting since I was a kid. I did this, this, and this. Does that help him in that he seems to be honest on some levels?
It really cuts both ways because the prosecution is painting this picture of someone who's so rich, he thinks he's above the law. The rules don't apply to him. That's why he can kill with impunity. The defense, on the other hand, is painting a different picture of someone who, George, you might not understand, why he's behaving like this, but he's just quirky. And they talk about Asperger's and autism. And, recently Elon Musk came on Saturday Night Live, and he's someone who's been criticized for some of the statements he's made. But he came out and he said, I have Asperger's and I'm just a little different than maybe folks in the general public.
Yeah, embracing that eccentricness, if you will. Neama Rahmani, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.